For quite some time, I wanted to make a video about what makes a food plot successful, or what is the most important part of a food plot for a hunter. And I got some notes here on my laptop that I'm going to go through. But my goal with today's video is to get you as a deer hunter planting food plots to think differently about what makes your food plots successful or not. We're told over and over again by other hunters and YouTube stars and TV personalities what defines a successful food plot. And normally, as hunters, as people who are planting food plots, we think of a successful food plot as one when it's corn and beans. If it has really good yields, 200 bushel corn or 70 bushel beans, in my area, that's a really good yield. Maybe it's a lot of tons of forage, whether that's brassicas or cereal rye or alfalfa. The amount of tons of forage would be a measure of success, or how lush and attractive and palatable that forage is. Maybe that's a measure of success. Maybe if our soil has the proper pH, a 6.5 to a 7 pH, or our nutrient levels or micronutrient levels are outstanding. Maybe that is what's defined as a good food plot or good soil conditions. Right now, it seems like trending a lot is regenerative agriculture and building soil health and building soil organic matter and CO2 respiration levels. So if we have increasing levels of organic matter and our biology in the soil is really good, the mycorrhizal fungi levels are increasing, maybe that's a measure of a successful food plot. Highly attractive and lush plots of clover and alfalfa or brassicas or different blends, so whether or not they're attractive to deer is a measure of a successful food plot. When you're using products, there's a lot of products on the market where you can spray on liquid calcium or different things to increase the pH, or different things to help your plots grow faster and better and more lush. So you go out and you use these products, and then you sit back and you look at the results, and the results are a very lush and a lot of tons of forage. So you say, well, that's a successful food plot. I used that product and that food plot was successful. For a lot of the YouTube stars and TV stars, if they can convince you to use their products and their food plot tools and their no-till drills and their roller crimpers and their highly marketed food plot seed blends, that's a success for them, because they've gotten you to support their sponsors, which in turn means they can keep hunting these giant bucks on their awesome farms. So for them, that would be a success. I did a little bit of pricing on some of these things that you can buy. A no-till drill, a brand new no-till drill can cost you $15,000. A roller crimper, another $5,000. You're looking at spending $10,000 on a tractor to pull these drills and these roller crimpers, maybe $20,000 or $30,000. It's not hard to spend $30,000 to get the equipment that we're told we need to plant these successful food plots. It's not hard to spend $30,000 at all. So having all this equipment and having these lush food plots and these grain food plots that yield really good corn and soybean bushels, is that what defines a good food plot or a successful food plot? What if you had the most luscious, highly attractive green plots, and you were building soil health, and your nutrient levels were through the roof, and your organic matter was increasing, and you had record corn and soybean yields, you had record forage yields on your property or on your food plot? If you had all of these things, does that mean that your food plot was successful? Maybe that does mean that your food plot was successful. But I've also seen many times where hunters have had all this stuff and they've spent a ton of money creating these phenomenal looking food plots. And I would argue that if their hunting didn't get any better and if they didn't meet their goals, their food plot was not a success. They did not have a successful food plot strictly because they had high yields or a very highly attractive and lush food plot if they didn't reach their goals. So that's really kind of where I'm going with this video, is When I define whether or not my food plots are successful, my definition of that is whether or not that food plot, whether it's a transition plot or a kill plot or a destination plot, whether one of those three plots, because those are the three plots that I plant, three types of plots that I plant, what I define whether or not that plot was successful is whether it allowed me to reach my goals or helped me to reach my goals. And my goals for the hunting season, there's a bunch of them. I want to be able to hunt as much as I possibly can. I want to protect and attract and grow big bucks so they make it to 4 and 5 and 6 years old. I want to be able to harvest these 4 and 5 and 6 year old bucks. I want to have fun with my family and my friends on my farms. So those are my goals. So if I plant a food plot and it doesn't help me reach those goals, I don't care how lush it is, I don't care how green it is, I don't care what the soil pH is, or if I'm building organic matter, or whether I got 200 bushel corn or 70 bushel beans, all of these things that you can measure a food plot and say, well, that is successful. If those things are not helping me reach my goals, then that food plot was not successful for me. Not everybody has to have those same goals. Not everybody has to have the goal of attracting bucks to your property, holding them on your property, and protecting them, let's say, through the gun season so that you can hunt them when they're 4 and 5 and 6 years old. That does not have to be one of your goals. I have a really good friend that I pick on him all the time, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but he likes to play farmer. I think he always wishes that he was a farmer, and so he does multiple passes of tillage equipment every spring, and he likes to borrow grain drills and planters, and he just likes to play farmer. So that might be, in reality, one of his goals. He might actually get happiness and enjoyment out of having that tractor time. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're honest with yourself and say, that's one of my goals. I want to be able to play farmer and enjoy the smell of the earth as I run my cultivator through it. But if you're doing all that stuff and you're going out and you're buying a no-till grain drill for $15,000 and a roller crimper and a $30,000 utility tractor, and you're doing all this stuff, increasing your organic matter, planting these high-priced marketed food plot blends, and at the end of the hunting season, if your goal was to attract and hold and protect big bucks and to kill big bucks, for example, and that's not happening for you, or it's not getting any better, then I don't care how lush that food plot was. I don't care how straight the planter rows were. I don't care about any of that stuff. If it hasn't helped you reach your goals, in my mind, those food plots were a failure. If that's a big part of your hunting strategy, is planting those food plots. I have 2 videos out there right now on transition food plots and destination food plots. And my goal with a transition food plot is to attract deer to an area, to manipulate their movement from their destination food source. Actually, I should say from their bedding area, from their security cover. I want to manipulate them through that transition area, that transition food plot, before they go out to their destination food source. So my goal with a transition food plot isn't to protect and attract and hold big bucks so I can grow them to their next age class. My goal with a transition food plot is to manipulate where they travel so that I can hunt them and kill them. So I look at a transition food plot, that's the goal. So if I'm successful in manipulating that deer movement through this transition food plot, then that food plot has been a success. It doesn't matter what my tonnage is. It doesn't matter what I use for a food plot blend, what my soil pH was, if I'm building organic matter. None of that stuff to me matters as long as I'm manipulating deer movement through my transition plot so I can kill them before they head out to their destination food plot. I hope that makes sense. And when I talk about, I just want to take a step back here a little bit. When I talk about regenerative agriculture and building organic matter and using no-till methods and roller crimpers, I'm not saying that that's bad. In fact, on my production acreage, Amy and I farm about 100 acres of tillable ground. And on my production acreage, we practice all no-till planting methods. We do all cover crops. We plant green into our cover crops. But I can justify spending the money on the equipment for the production part of the farm because there's a return on that investment. The second food plot that I'll plant is a destination food plot. And the destination food plot is usually a food plot that's out away from cover. It's not tight up against cover and bedding and security cover, but it's out a ways, maybe 50 or 100 or 200 yards away from security cover and bedding cover. And the goal of the destination food plot is to attract deer and to create that bed to feed pattern on a daily basis. That's the goal. So, and really one more thing is to have my farm peak in attractiveness and holding power so I can protect and hold bucks when they're 2 and 3 and 4 years old, so I can get them to their next age class. So it's that bed to feed pattern and protecting bucks by keeping them on my farm. That's the goal with a destination food plot. So I've said in earlier videos that I plant a lot of corn and I plant a lot of soybeans in my destination food plots. If I plant, let's say, corn in my area, 200 bushel corn, maybe 220 bushel corn is considered an outstanding yield for corn in my area, a really good yield. If my destination food plot can attract and hold bucks through the season, protect bucks when I want them to during those gun seasons, and there's still enough corn left for my late muzzleloader season where I can hunt over that destination food plot, but I only had 120 bushels or 150 bushels, when a really good yield is 200, in my mind, that food plot was a success because I'm not focused on my yield number. I'm focused on the purpose and the goal of that food plot. Same with beans. If a really good bean yield in my area is 70 bushel beans, but I can accomplish what I want with that destination food plot with 40 bushel beans, then I've reached my goal and that food plot was a success. The flip side of that is if I locate that destination food plot, or if I locate that transition food plot in the wrong area and I hunt it incorrectly, and I get 200 bushel corn in my transition food plot, my greens are lush, beautiful brassicas and just a lot of green, nice, lush forage and tonnage on my transition food plots, but they haven't helped me reach my goals. I haven't manipulated the deer herd with my transition food plots, or maybe I overhunted or I located my destination food plots in the wrong area. Even though I have 200 bushel corn or 70 bushel beans, in my mind, that would be a failure of that food plot. So my whole point of this video is to try and get you to think in a different way, that a successful food plot is not what it yields, not how attractive it is, not how palatable it is, not how much tons of food it gives, not if you're building organic matter or what your pH is or your nutrient levels are in your soil. Those things do matter to a certain extent, but that's not the ultimate goal for a hunter. The ultimate goal for a hunter is, what are these food plots doing for me to help me reach my goals? When you're watching, and I have to bring this up, and every time I do one of these videos, I struggle with, should I talk about this or shouldn't I talk about this? And I think I have to, because when you're watching some YouTube stars or TV stars, their goal with their planting methods and what they use to plant and their seed plot, food plot blends, one of their goals is to convince you that you need this stuff to have the best food plot. That's one of their goals. And if you buy into it and you buy that $15,000 no-till grain drill, or you buy that $100 for a third acre food plot seed blend, then they've reached one of their goals because you've spent your money. It goes through their sponsors back to them, and they can continue to have outstanding hunting on some of the best hunting ground areas in the country. So they've reached part of their goals by convincing you to buy this stuff. And it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. You don't have to spend a ton of money and have this premium stuff and premium soils and premium food plot blends. You know, premium, I would say, because I don't even believe they are premium. You don't have to have that to have good hunting. In fact, most hunters who are on limited resources, we don't have unlimited time and we don't have unlimited money. If you're spending money on this stuff, chasing the perfect food plot blend and the perfect regenerative agriculture and building soil health, if you're chasing this stuff and your hunting's not getting any better, you're also spending money on things that isn't making your hunting any better, and you're taking away that resource from something that actually would help you. So I think it's important to talk about that when I'm doing these videos. I want to give one example of what I mean by defining success on reaching your goals or not. This is just one example. Back in 2000, it was a tough year for fall planted food plots. And it was a pretty dry year, hot year in one of my transition food plots. In fact, all of my transition food plots, but this specific transition food plot, by most people's definitions on whether a food plot is successful or not, they would say that this was a failed food plot. This was unsuccessful. I planted my green blend of winter rye or winter wheat. I don't remember exactly which one I used that year. Probably winter rye, oats, and crimson clover. Lightly dissed in the seed, but we just never had any rain. And you could argue, well, if you were using regenerative agriculture and no-till drilled in that seed, that you would have had a better food plot, quote, a better food plot. My point is this. That transition food plot is located in a perfect spot between bedding cover and destination food. The food this year, that year in 2000, was a very nice alfalfa field. And that alfalfa field, even though it was hot and dry, was still very lush, very attractive to the deer. It was actually on my neighbor's farm, the alfalfa was. But this transition food plot was in between bedding and feeding. So the goal of my transition food plots is to manipulate deer movement between bedding and destination food source so that I could get a shot at them. And even though this food plot was, quote unquote, a terrible food plot, very little green forage, wasn't highly attractive necessarily because it wasn't very lush, it was good enough to bring my biggest buck within bow range as he came out of his bedding area, came through this transition food plot, worked a mock scrape. Well, he was going to work a mock scrape, didn't quite get that far, and I killed him at about 10 yards. So by my definition of was that food plot a success, absolutely it was a success because it did what I wanted it to do by manipulating deer movement through this area before they went out to destination food source. So that's one example. Many, many years ago, I would define my food plot, my food plot's success or not on how they looked and what they yielded. So if I had really good soybeans, really good corn that had high yields, that was a success. If my food plots were very lush, they looked really good, they were very palatable, that was a success. And you need, in my opinion, as a hunter, if you want to be a successful hunter, and for me, it's to attract, grow, protect big bucks and kill them when they're mature. If you want to be a successful hunter and reach your goals, you need to quit looking at, is my food plot lush and high yielding, to whether or not that food plot helps you reach your goals. And that's what should tell you whether your food plot was successful or not. I would argue that for the vast majority of hunters out there, if you're trying to grow bucks to their next age class, if you're trying to protect bucks, to grow bucks, even if it's from a 2-year-old to a 3-year-old or from a 3-year-old to 4-year-old, it's probably not reasonable in some areas of the country to say, my goal is to get a buck to 6 or 7 years old and then kill him. In many areas of the country, that's probably not reasonable. But it is reasonable in just about everywhere in the country to say, I want to get one more year on them. I want to get those 2-year-olds to 3, or I want to get the 3-year-olds to 4. That is reasonable. For the vast majority of the hunters with those kinds of goals, or even if your goal is I want to see more deer, or I want to have more deer on my farm, if those are the types of goals that you should concentrate on those goals as it defines everything you do with hunting. Is your food plot successful? Well, has it helped you reach your goals? I put in this food plot screen. Was that food plot screen successful? Did it help you reach your goals? I hung 3 new tree stands this year, and I hunted my farm a little bit different than the way I did last year. Did that help you reach your goals? Start at what your goals are as a hunter, and then to define or to judge or to take a step back and evaluate whether or not the things that you did with your hunting made you more successful. Always measure that on what your goals were, and that'll help you become a better hunter. With food plots, location, I would argue location, where that food plot is planted, where it is, what your access is to it. So in other words, how it's hunted or not hunted in the case of a destination food plot for me, because I don't hunt my destination food plots until the very late season. So where a food plot's located and how it's hunted or not hunted are the most important key elements to making a food plot successful or not. That is what will make a food plot fail or be successful for most hunters around the country.